Wondering what's going on in the world of infrastructure as code? That's what today's video is all about. What's up, everybody? It's Ned Bellavance, nedinthecloud.com. Welcome to another Terraform Tuesday. This week, I've got a special guest coming on the show, Matt Gowie. He is the CEO at MasterPoint, and he has been tracking the infrastructure as code landscape for a while now, and he's got some opinions and thoughts to share, so I got to pick his brain for a little bit. So please enjoy this episode, and I'll be back at the end with a little more information. Well, Matt, welcome to Terraform Tuesday. I'm very excited to have you on the show. I've been really enjoying your LinkedIn posts all about IAC and different aspects of what's going on in the landscape. Before we get into that, why don't you give me a little background about who you are and what you do in this weird technology space we find ourselves in?
Yeah, sure. Nice to be here. Thanks, Ned. So I run a company called MasterPoint. We're a team of less than 10 people. We're very focused on consulting within the infrastructure as code space. What we do for our clients is really automate, migrate, innovate, implement best practices for Terraform, OpenTofu, and Pulumi. So that's like what we are really good at doing, what we help our clients excel at. And then we usually set them up for success and we wave goodbye into the sunset and they go on to do amazing things. So, that's the 30-second version. Keep it there.
Awesome. Yeah. I got to imagine I did consulting for almost 7 years, and I got to encounter all kinds of interesting environments where people had taken the best approach they had at the time for infrastructure and other solutions. So I'm sure you've seen some interesting trends as you've been doing consulting. What would you say when you go to an organization, what level of infrastructure as code have they adopted when you get there?
Yeah. To what you're pointing out, like it really ranges the full gambit. I mean, there's a lot of organizations who are still struggling to get full adoption for all of the things that they manage. So we typically run into the customer that maybe the core application that they manage is an infrastructure as code, but a lot of pieces are not, and they're click ops. We've also run into a lot of customers who have everything in infrastructure as code. They've done a really good job, but they've done the bad practices where they built everything from scratch, or they went ahead and they made the Terralift problem just over and over and over again, where they just have one big root module, or maybe like a root module per account, and they need to like break that up because it's going so slow for them. So I don't know, the spectrum of what we've run into in terms of clients and like what they do and how they automate, how they think about infrastructure as code from a organizational file structure perspective. It really is kind of large in scope. Like that
Right.
spectrum is like a pretty big band. I wouldn't say that there's anything that I've seen as like, this is the trend that everybody needs to stop doing, other than the like classic Terralift. That's kind of yeah.
I want to dig into that term a little bit more because I've seen it maybe once before, and it made me laugh a little bit because it's clever. But when
Yeah.
you say a teralith, I'm thinking like monolith, right? Is
hmm
that the intention? Is that how you describe it?
Yeah, it's funny you asked this. Our last blog post on the MasterPoint website is titled "What is a Terralith?" And we love it because I think it, for people that understand, hey, we had this whole monolith problem, and then we moved to microservices, and now we have more problems. But the Terralith issue is basically coined, and I'm gonna forget her name, but it was at a HashiConf in like 2016, 2017, 2018, somewhere around then.
Sure.
But really, it's this idea that, hey, you have a root module, the thing that you actually plan and apply. And that root module, the state file for it, you shove everything in there, right? And you create it to be where it's so big that you have plan and apply times slow down drastically. And then you have blast radius problems. Those are the two main ones that we talk to clients about and why we say, hey, don't do this. Um, but you basically have blast radius problems where you say, okay, hey, I want to upgrade this database version, but I'm also managing my application cluster over in the same state file, and I need to do those changes like independently.
Hmm.
Planning and applying that, rolling that out as a infrastructure change is no longer simple. You sometimes you need to do a targeted apply. You need to be like very specific about how you're going to do that, and it just kind of it means all of your infrastructure gets managed in one bulk change instead of having it be isolated. Where, hey, I want my database to not really get touched all that often. I want my application cluster to get upgraded. I want to change environment variables. I want to change secrets all the time. So yeah, that's a Terralift. I'll link the blog post if you want to put it in the show notes, because I feel like it's a really good one. My team member Yang, he's newer to my team and he's just been killing it. And he wrote a great article on what it is, why you want to avoid it, all that fun stuff.
Awesome. Definitely will include that down in the description. How does one go about breaking up a Terralith? Because it does sound like it's a very sensitive operation, trying to get it into these separate modules as opposed to just being one gigantic root module and state file.
Yeah, it's fun. So luckily we've gotten better at migrating now. We have a lot of like tools within Terraform to do declarative migrations, right? Like you can move around state. Sadly, for breaking up a root module and moving state between different state files, that's still actually pretty hard. You have to run commands on the command line. I'm sure you know all about this. This is Terraform Tuesdays, but that's actually the pain, and that's some of the things that clients help ask us to do. And we've gotten good at writing the, hey, let's run this as a script. It's a straight up migration. We start up the resources over here. Maybe we import some of them. Maybe we have to migrate state for others. But then we're able to remove state. We're able to kind of decompose it into different micro states. We'll call them as like an analogy towards the monolith versus microservices piece. I should actually coin a term around that, but another time. Yeah.
Right. Well, I got to imagine the introduction of import blocks and now removed blocks allows you to do the whole process declaratively, if that works for you. You can add the removed blocks to the module you're pulling them out of, and then the import blocks to the one you're pulling them into.
We've had some success with that. We've done 2 recent migrations in the past like few months for clients, and there's been a lot of success with using just import and then removing things or just, hey, if you're breaking up the entire Terralith and you have separate states and separate root modules for all of the resources that were in there, then you can just throw that state file away. You don't even need to deal with it.
Right.
But I will say that import is like the stepchild resource of or the stepchild. It's not your typical CRUD for a resource, right, within Terraform. So you like cross your fingers that you run into it for all resources, and if you don't, then you need to do the command line operation to say, hey, this resource needs to move to this state file, and in that case you need like that state file locally. You need to like do some shenanigans at the command line. We've written the script a number of times and it works. It's just ugly.
Moving away from Terraform a little bit, I know it is Terraform Tuesday, but that's not the only IAC in the game. You mentioned OpenTofu and Pulumi. Have you seen much adoption of either of those as opposed to Terraform?
Yeah, we've done OpenTofu migrations for clients a number of times now. Very successfully. We're really kind of bullish on the project overall, because I really like to have optionality for my clients so that they can say, hey, if this vendor that we're using for Terraform automation 10x's their prices, where do we go?
Right.
I want them to have a good option to go somewhere else. And OpenTofu actually allows you to have optionality other than just open source or writing your own pipelines. So that's why we've kind of been happy with OpenTofu. We've had a couple very successful, or I should say a few very successful migrations for clients. The Pulumi front, I'll be honest, we haven't worked on a Pulumi project yet. I have one of my engineers who I've, had them do some R&D on a Pulumi project, but we just haven't run into a customer yet that really wants to work on Pulumi. We would love to. I'm interested in it. I would love to, like, from the project management and from the like very deep understanding I have of the IAC landscape. I like really want to like get my hands like dirty on a real client project, not something that's like a small thing for us.
Hmm.
But we haven't done it yet. So if anybody has any pulling me projects, they need serious smarts on. We can make mountains move for you.
Oh, that's awesome. Um, Aside from Pulumi and OpenTofu, what other interesting IAC tools are out there? And I don't mean like CloudFormation and ARM templates because those will always exist, but like third party solutions that are not bound to a particular cloud.
Yeah, I mean, there's a bunch. I think that the ones that I usually think of are there's Crossplane, there's the new ones on the block, kind of like Winglang, and there's
Mm,
System Initiative. I don't know much about those.
okay.
There's also CDK, um, and I think that all of them are still kind of at the fringe where they haven't like received full adoption. There's CDKTF, which I have again still haven't run into that much. I think that a lot of it comes down to, hey, what do you the developer who's the lead on the project, what are they called to? And
Mhm.
then that ends up being the decision for the company, depending on the size of the company. I think a lot of people know that, hey, with Terraform, with OpenTofu, you have this kind of massive ecosystem of people who have written a lot of open source infrastructure as code. And they've written, there's a lot of like content out there. There's a lot of support. There's a lot of people who you can hire who know how to do these things. So it's a usually a safer bet for bigger organizations to go towards the well known things. But yeah, Crossplane, Winglang, and CDK are the things that come to mind. I don't know. What have you run into? Anything that I'm missing?
Um, Similar experience. I haven't seen anybody talking about some of what I think of as the older configuration management tools. So I haven't seen a whole lot of Salt Stack or Ansible. Not that Ansible isn't viable; it still has a huge, vibrant community, but I don't see it being used for IAC very often. Or Puppet or Chef. All of those have either kind of drifted into configuration management, they've been absorbed by some much larger company that's moved into rent extraction, or like with Ansible, they have a very specific focus, and IAC is not the way that Ansible tends to focus.
Yeah, Ansible is a funny one. I used to write a ton of Ansible back in like 2014, 2015, 2016. And and I really liked it, but I also didn't think about things in the world of immutable infrastructure. And I think
Yeah.
as soon as you kind of fumble or you find your way into immutable infrastructure, whether that's containers or whether that's, hey, let's pack an image using Packer and ship it, um, that feels superior because you're not. Yeah, we all know the pets versus cattle debate, I think. And I'd really rather treat everything as cattle. Like I want to not have to think about what is the state of this thing? Has it drifted? Ansible doesn't have um, any state management of the resource that you're applying changes to. So Terraform in my mind is just like, hey, once people find it, they get on that thought process, and then it's just kind of a switch. But yeah, there's still viable reasons to use those tools.
Yeah, my first introduction to declarative style configuration was actually Microsoft's DSC product. I don't know if you
Mm.
ever messed around with that. It was called desired state configuration, and it started with PowerShell. So you defined in PowerShell modules the desired state of something, and then you could import these other modules that would do the get, test, and set
Mm.
portions of
Okay.
the reconciliation loop for you, or you could write your own. And I used it to deploy SQL Server several times because it would set up all of SQL Server, and then you could run a check against it to make sure configuration hasn't drifted, and also update settings if you wanted to manage it. So that was kind of cool. It was like 2014 or something. And I was configuring SQL with DSC.
Okay, interesting. The one that I hear about often, or the like, I feel like the sysadmin folks always bring up, or maybe that's me being a jerk in some way, but CF Engine is the one that like gets thrown around as like, oh yeah, IAC is not old. This is a thing we've been doing for forever. And I never got to play around with that, but definitely there's a lot of there's a long history that we
Yeah.
have here, for sure.
You tend to get really, well, some people get very, what's locked into the tool set, and
Yeah.
they kind of have, it's a point of pride how well they know a particular tool. I mean, see all the people who use VI instead of any other editor because they've
That's a
invested
good
so
point.
much time and effort into learning VI. So that is the way in the light. But for someone who's new and just, fresh onto the scene, maybe those tools don't make a whole lot of sense because the world doesn't function that way as much anymore.
Yeah, I've definitely seen that, and I'll be honest, I have a uh, back when I was still like early to writing content on LinkedIn. I've been doing it for probably a couple of years now. But I think in the first like 6 months, I made a post that got the most viral thing, one of the most viral. It's been like top three for sure. Where I wrote that the headline was "Ansible is dead," and I had never had so much hate. And I was like on vacation, and I came back to 500 to 1,000 likes and a ton of comments that were just pissed. And yeah, people love their tool, and I think I realized I shouldn't be so contrarian. Don't need to stir the pot on people. But yeah, it's funny how people we get attached to something, and I think that's what the BSL license change. Like when that happened, that was like me. I felt like like betrayed a bit because I'm attached to Terraform in a way,
Right.
right? Anyway, a we all get affected by it, and that's the reality.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think that's an interesting note to end on. And at some point, I'd like to have you back on to maybe walk through the process of breaking up a Teralith if you'd be game for that. I think that could be really interesting for viewers to kind of see what the process looks like.
Yeah, more than happy to do it. This was quick and easy, and loved to chat. So yeah, that'd
Cool.
be fun.
If anybody wants to follow you, is LinkedIn the best place, or is there a website you'd point them at?
Yeah, LinkedIn is great. Publish content there usually 3 times a week. And then masterpoint.io is where you can find information about our services, our blog, and then I have a newsletter that is really it's kind of out of your way, twice a month, pretty quick and easy. Gives you more of a longer form take of what I put on LinkedIn. So when you miss a post on LinkedIn, you can check out the newsletter. But yeah, that's it.
Awesome. Well, Matt Gowie, thank you so much for being on Terraform Tuesday.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure. Thanks, Ned.
Wow. So it turns out that there's more than just Terraform in the world of infrastructure as code. Who knew? There's all these interesting projects coming out. Would you be interested in hearing more about non-Terraform things? Because I can certainly branch out. Let me know down in the comments if that's something that you would be interested in, and maybe suggest a product that you want me to dig into more. I could try to have a guest from that vendor to talk about it, if that's of interest to you. As always, thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe and like and do all the things if you don't mind. Till next time, keep calm and Terraform on.